What day is it? It's it's HappiJac Day. But wait, why are you installing a HappiJac? Didn't we just spend a whole lot of time and effort building a DIY bed lift that works really well now? Yes, yes, we did. And that's kind of how I do things. Throughout the process of turning this into our perfect camper van, I go through a lot of iterations. Just because we come up with a floor plan on paper doesn't necessarily mean that's actually going to work or work for us. Now, I know a lot of people are happy with those particular floor plans and designs that works for them, but how does that really translate to our use cases and how we move in that space? And I don't always know. So what I don't want to do is spend a lot of money trying to find out. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll build something close enough to that just for the purposes of figuring out if it's going to work for us. Now, if it works really well in that state, we keep it. If there are reasons to move to the next stage, which is the more expensive option, we do that. So that's what's going on here. The bed lift where we put it worked really well for our uses. It made a nice living room and bedroom space and kept the back of the van fully open for kitchen and bath and other things. So now that we've proven that it works and we've camped in it for many months in that configuration, it's time to think about, does it check all of our boxes? Is there room for improvement? Can I make those improvements with what I have? Or is there really a reason to go to the more expensive commercial option? And so we listed out all the pros and cons and thought about it for a little bit. And at the end of the day, we decided, yes, we absolutely do want the HappiJac. It will give us things that my DIY bed lift could not give us. The main thing it's going to give us is the ability to stop it anywhere we want to stop it along those tracks and have it lock in place. It's not going to move. It's not going to bounce around. It's not going to shift. It's going to stay right where we put it. Another benefit is that it's not going to have to be smushed up against the ceiling in order for it to stay in place. So with a DIY bed lift, the only way to get that secured up at the top is to really cinch it up in there. And in the process of doing that, I broke a lot of my ceiling panels. So I can make thicker, stronger ceiling panels, figure out something else. I just don't want to do that. So this solves that problem as well. And there were a few other odds and ends and reasons why we wanted to go this route. So at the end of the day, it's what we did. Today is HappiJac Day. Let's get going. Well, this is where I'm at. I got to this point late yesterday afternoon, and I kind of worked late into the evening like I often do, but I thought with something this important, I want to install it once. So when that's the case, much like when cutting a hole in the roof or the floor or something that's quite literally not reversible, I want to take my time with that, and I want to make sure it's done correctly. So I will often get to the point where I'm almost ready to do that and then wait at least overnight. And then in the morning, sometimes I wake up and I think, gosh, I'm glad I didn't do that yesterday, because now I thought of all these other things I could do better or differently, or you know what I mean. So for the big decisions, I like to take a little extra time and make sure that I'm going to do it correctly. But as it turns out, for this one, I didn't come up with anything new or revealing or different that I would have done. But it was still valuable because it was a very long day yesterday, and if I had continued into the evening, fatigued and not thinking as clearly as I am in the morning, you know, I could have made mistakes. So still, it was the right decision to make. And now today, we're going to install this. So let me show you what we've got so far. So in preparation for the HappiJac installation, I did a number of things. One is I recorded the center of the van. Typically this is running along the floor, so I can make sure that all of my cabinets, benches, and everything along the van are in perfect alignment with the floor and each other. I went vertical with this one. You know, it's not exact, but it is within about 1/8 of an inch, so it's close enough for what we're doing here. I also marked the center line of the HappiJac. Now in the specifications, the HappiJac says it's exactly 48 inches on the interior from this piece to this piece. That's not true. It's actually not exactly 48 inches. It's close, but it's not exact. So I did take my time and make sure that I got the exact center marked here. and that is not exactly 24 inches in from each side. It is a little different. I also want to protect the finish on the partition wall. This is a really nice pre-finished product. It does scratch easily, so I put the construction paper on here and taped it down. It might still get scratched up, but it's not going to be near as bad. I got both of these back walls installed as well. That will provide the support for the back half of the HappiJac system. And during the installation of these walls, I made sure to use this laser measuring tool to ensure that the distance between these walls are the exact same distance to the partition wall. So I made sure that the measurement from here to the partition wall as well as from here to the partition wall was exactly the same as each other, as well as exactly the same on the other side, top and bottom. And by the way, that measurement is 75 inches. So I have exactly 75 inches from this surface to the partition wall and exactly 75 inches from this surface to the partition wall, top and bottom. I also wanted to see if I could get this centered in the van, and in order to determine that, I pulled out this piece. This is exactly 60 inches long. This is for a queen size bed. So these tabs attach to the trolley of a HappiJac. So I need to be able to account for this much space on each side. Now that space will potentially go into the wall or potentially not clear this here. And that's what I was looking for. Can I center the HappiJac and have this clear as is, or do I need to think of something else? And that could either be trimming this back some, or it could be putting the HappiJac slightly off center, which is acceptable. In order to determine that, I simply went up here with this and put it in place. This is not how this is installed, but it's how I can see the tabs and where the tabs are on the trolley. And they should line up somewhere like this. And if the HappiJac goes all the way to the ceiling, will I hit anything? I don't expect the rail to go up this far because the mattress is 6 inches deep, so it may go up almost to here, but right now I have clearance on that side. It's not going to hit the wall, and I have clearance on this side. It's not going to hit this part of the metal as I'm coming down. But in order to achieve that, I had to offset the HappiJac exactly 5/16 of an inch towards the driver's side. Otherwise, I was hitting up against this. I had a lot of extra room on this side because of the way I constructed and designed this wall. A lot of people do framing and then some sort of shiplap or panels over top of the framing, and that would push the wall out. And if I did that, then I would have to trim both sides of this, and then I wouldn't have a queen size bed. I'd have a full size or some other custom size. I want to maintain our 60-inch width, so we're not going to get the length of a queen or even an RV queen. We'll probably end up with maybe 6 feet exactly in length. With 2 adults and 2 dogs, we need that space. I also wanted to plan for how high the HappiJac should be installed. Should it be at this height? Should it be lower? Should it be higher? You know, what are my options here? So one of the things I looked at was, where is the ceiling going to be? So I know that the ceiling comes across at approximately this plane, maybe a 1/4 inch past this. So I needed to account for that. I also have this opening to the shelf here. So I don't want this to come down and cover up any of the shelf opening. So I don't want it to go much lower than where it's at. And in terms of how low it would go, you know, I think I'm fine with that. I don't have to worry too much about it. Even if I came down more from this, that's still fine. It's still not getting into the cushions of the bench. We still have plenty of space here. That means the location of the HappiJac where I have it now actually works out for all the different parameters I'm planning for. Have I accounted for all the different parameters? I hope so. But at the very least, I accounted for the most important ones. And because everything seemed perfect and it seemed like I didn't miss anything, that's how I knew that I missed something, and I waited. So this is now after lunch on that same day, and I've not installed anything, and now I'm really happy that I waited, because I realized, yes, I measured and figured out everything for the partition wall side right behind you, but how does that really translate to this side? Is it going to be the same? Are there going to be problems? So put a piece here, see how it fits. Doesn't fit. So if I put this at the same level I had it on the partition wall, it would actually go up past through here. So that's a problem. On the partition wall, it's not as much of a problem, but over here, I have these structural pieces here for the ceiling, and this is what this wall comes up against. So on the partition wall, whereas I can have the HappiJac go up beyond this plane and then work around it with a ceiling. In this case, I can't go around this, and I need that piece to support the ceiling, so I can't put this up as high as I had it. How high can I put it up? It's a good question. All right, what about moving these walls farther back towards the back of the van? If we can get them back 3 inches, give or take, then we're in the same situation we are in the front by the partition wall. We can put the HappiJac farther up to the ceiling and just work the ceiling panels around that. Now, I've thought about that, and that would have been awesome, but I can't do that. I have this wall back literally as far as it will go. I wanted to maximize the length of the bed with what else I had to work with, and we did that. But I'm maxed out. I don't have any more space to give on this. It's because we have 2 water tanks, one on each side over the wheel well. Now, I could have gotten a driver's side and passenger side, in which case this one would have the bulk of the water tank sitting behind the wheel, and that way I'd have extra space here. But our floor plan doesn't allow for that, because this space back in here is the bathroom, and this space is where the shower pan goes. So I need to have the maximum width in this space as possible to accommodate the shower. The other side is a cabinet with the toilet built in that comes out of the cabinet. This side is the shower and also allows easier exit out this door. So we need to have this path open. This is a shower pan. So I couldn't have the bulk of the water tank here, which means that I bought 2 driver's side tanks and flipped it around so that the bulk of this tank is here. So this tank literally comes to within an inch of this. And I need that inch because the extruded aluminum framing I use is exactly 1 inch wide, and I need to be able to build the next cabinet starting here. So I need this 1 inch for the next set of cabinets that go here, that go up and around the water tank. The refrigerator will sit here, microwave will sit here. There's extra storage cabinets above. This is a floor to ceiling cabinet here, but I need that space. And the water tank goes right up against it. So I have literally not a fraction of an inch to spare. This is as far back as I can get it. That's just how van building goes. So I really wanted to get this thing installed right away, as I always do. I also knew I had to be careful because there were a lot of different things to think about how this works in the van and in conjunction with other parameters and systems and things I have in the van. But if I do this wrong, it will cause a major problem to have to try to figure out later. So I really need to be careful with this. I went through a number of different iterations to try to figure out how to prop this up and get it in the place where it's supposed to be. So I've got stacks of blocks. I've got 2x4s like this that I sister together in different heights, and none of that really worked out. So what I thought I would do was just see how high I can get it to go. So by loosening these at the top and then being able to push them back just a little bit, and then shoving that corner piece in on each side and getting it up in there, using the clamps to hold it in place, it ended up perfect. So I made sure I was off center towards the driver's side about 5/16 of an inch. It may be a little off, but I'll measure that and make sure. And then I measured from the bottom of each of the legs to the floor, and I have literally 20 3/8 inches exactly on both sides. So I locked it in place with a number of clamps, and I'm going to try to get some bolts in it before it moves because I think it's exactly where it needs to be. I'm also checking things on this side. So I've got the cross beam in here for the HappiJac. This one is fully installed. I have bolts all the way through, top and bottom, in all the places that require the bolts. And the instructions say to put a screw in, but I've actually put a bolt through. I used a 1/4 by 1 1/4 inch because I do have 3/4 inch plywood, large fender washers, and a nylock nut on the back. So this is not going anywhere. It's very well secured. I spent a lot of time yesterday trying to figure out where to actually mount this to. There are multiple places to mount it to on the trolley. The trolley is basically from here to here. And there's 2 bolts on the top. You can't see one of them, but those, I don't think I'm allowed to move those, so I'm not touching those, and I don't need to anyway for what I'm doing. But there are multiple locations down below that where you can attach this rail. So I've experimented with each of the different positions and where this would then end up height-wise. And so I like this height here. This is almost exactly 6 feet, just a little bit more than that. And that's plenty. But what does that do for the mattress and the bed frame? Will it now fit? So to figure that out, let's actually mock it up a little bit. So I bought a standard queen size bed. It was 60 by 80, and I did have to cut some of that off. I used an electric carving knife. It wasn't a clean cut, but I did I did make it work, and it's fine. This is a nice 90-degree angle, so we can get some idea with it. We'll put this up against here. I'm going to construct the bed frame out of 1-inch profile extruded aluminum. So I just put a couple of pieces of that up here. This is just scrap that I'm going to use for now as an example. And so this will be the bed frame. I'll have a 1/4-inch bunking board on top of this, so it won't add much height, but it'll add a little bit of structure. And then on top of that, I will have this 6-inch mattress. So it fits fine with the wall. It fits fine with the ceiling. Where it's not going to fit fine with is the motor that attaches here. Okay, all right. This is my carve out for the motor, hopefully to fit that shape. And I actually found, because this has a 1-inch piece on the top, I just had to cut the sides, and then this literally peeled off. So it turned out nicer than I thought it was going to. Let me see how that fits. I'm seeing no compression of this against the motor. So what are the implications of having a cutout like this and then putting sheets over it? Well, sheets are fine, no problem. It'll be okay. It might be a little weird for the person sleeping on this side when your foot ends up in this, but I don't know. It's so far off in the far corner that I don't know how much of an issue it's going to be. But if it becomes an issue, then I can already tell you that this will be my side of the bed. It's just how it goes. I made this happen, so I will live with the consequences. All right, I want to talk about these trolleys for just a moment. Let me get in here so I can get a better view of it. One of the things that helps me a lot is information, and I use that for planning purposes, just as you probably do. And one of the things I couldn't find, or that wasn't clear, or I didn't even know to ask for, was specific to these trolleys and the spacing. So when I read that this is 61 inches long, top to bottom, and then I think to myself, okay, well the bottom will end up here. That means the bottom of the mattress should probably end up here, and then I can make plans based on that. Same with the top. If it goes up this high, then the mattress will be at this height, and then these other components are, you know what I mean. It didn't quite work out that way for me because of the way the trolley is configured and how long it is. Actually, hold on, let me get it down here so we can take a look. Did you know you could just take a ratchet and move it with the ratchet before you get the motor hooked up? Okay, that's as far down as it goes. And that's part of the problem, because now where I've got this positioned so that the bed is up as high as I need it to be, it's several inches up from the bottom of the trolley. The trolley is this size. That's approximately 8 inches of trolley that you have to account for somehow. There are 2 holes at the top, 2 at the bottom, and 2 in the middle, so 6 positions, but the top 2 seem to be taken up already, so I don't know if I can remove those. And again, I would not want to for my configuration. I don't know about yours. But where I've got this here, makes it so I have exactly 6 feet of walking space under the bed. But then the other end of that, here at its lowest position, this ends up really high, a lot higher than I wanted it to be. I had a goal of not having to build a step or a ladder or some other solution to be able to get in and out of bed. So these are the things in all the HappiJac videos, installation and marketing and all these things that they really don't come across correctly for someone like me. I need the details. The details matter. The next item I want to cover is the the trolley is here, and this is installed on the trolley, so it holds everything in place. It keeps that from moving, and it keeps this in somewhat of a square. Now I say somewhat of a square because it is not a square. If you measure the distance between the uprights on the very top and then at the very bottom when this is installed, you'll see that those measurements are not the same. While that is a well-known fact, and a lot of people have talked about that, and now I've talked about that, what's not talked about is what do you do about that? So which upright is the one to go off of? Which one is square? Are neither one of them square? Do you push them out equally to make that change? Do you, how do you account for that, really? So the way I did it was I installed the crossbar, and so I know that the crossbar has its connection points at exactly the correct width you need. So when you install that and you move that all the way to the bottom, you know that the bottom and the top are now in perfect alignment. Next, so with a digital level, I can put this on the floor, zero out so that that would be known as perfectly level, and then I can put that on here, make sure it's perfectly level. I could put that on here, make sure that's perfect 90 degrees. I could put it on here, and it's going to show 180 degrees if it's square. So when all of those are correct off of the floor, then and only then do I put the bottom bolts in these uprights. I did it already on the other one, so it is fully in place and fully square off of the floor. This one is next. Okay, so I'm going to turn it on and put it on the floor. I'm going to zero that out. So it is now reading 0. And I'll just do a quick test with no changes to anything. Okay, I'm off a little bit here. I'm showing 0.2. Let's try it on the side. I have 89.7, 90.1. So I have a little bit of work to do, so I'm just going to make some adjustments and then we'll come back to this. Okay, I finally got it figured out. We're at 180 here. This one is coming in at 0. I have both of the sides at 90. So that should be perfect. So I'm going to look to lock that in place, but I'm not fully locking it in place. I'm going to put one bolt somewhere near the bottom to hold that where it is, and then we're going to evaluate further because I'm not convinced. The next test I want to do is use a laser measure and make sure that we have the exact same distance in all of the 4 corners so there won't be any surprises. So I put both of these down to its lowest position. We're going to test from here. 5, 11, and 7/8. What do I get here? 5, 11, and 7/8. That's not bad. Now we're going to run them to the top. Okay, I finally got everything squared up pretty good. It's within normal tolerances, and I think it's off by a 1/16 of an inch here and there. But the distance from one side to the other on the top as well as on the bottom, from driver's side to passenger side, is identical. As far as the front to back goes, the front is a little bit lower, but I think that's normal. In the instructions, it says to hook up the system so that the end that is not where the motor is, so the end that doesn't contain the motor, which is the front of the van in this case, should be 13 millimeters or half an inch higher. So you wouldn't adjust the actual structure, you would adjust the trolley. So before you connect the drive shaft, you just move the trolley up half an inch, give or take, and then it would level out perfectly. Right. I also did a temporary hookup of the electrical to test it, and it does work. So I've run it, like I said, up and down a number of times. I've watched for any type of issues. All right, so those are just pre-tests. I still haven't gone through and cleaned really well. I haven't gone through and adjusted any of these tensions on the chains, and I haven't gone through and fixed this so that it will sit 13 millimeters higher than it currently does. So all of those things can be done off camera, but the main thing is I was able to get it perfectly level and square So I'm going to work on the frame next, and basically I'm taking the frame I built when I did the DIY bed lift, which was a 1x3 profile extruded aluminum, so 3 inches tall, 1 inch wide, and instead of having it sit like this 3 inches, I'm going to turn it on its side so it's only 1 inch tall. And that's important to be able to get it up as close to the ceiling as possible. This is the new bed frame. It's reconfigured from the DIY bed lift build. It is now 60 inches wide and just short of 72 inches long. And the larger pieces are extruded aluminum in a 3 inch by 1 inch profile. In the DIY bed lift, I had these turned the opposite way. So it actually created a 3 inch base for the bed. And I needed that space because that's where the motor was and the drive shaft and the webbing would coil up. So I needed those 3 inches. Here, I want to keep it as narrow as possible. So I turned them all so that they would only be 1 inch thick. So let's take a look at how that changes the profile. Look at how thin that is now. So one of the main differences between the DIY bed lift and the HappiJac is that in my DIY bed lift, I had it go all the way to the ceiling and literally compress up against the ceiling in order to hold it in place. Otherwise, it would move around. And I didn't want that while I was driving. So that did a couple things. One, it broke a couple of the ceiling panels, but also it did give us that extra height. But the HappiJac doesn't go all the way to the ceiling. It touches a little bit on the edges, but in the middle, there's a gap. So how do I account for that extra space allocated, but not lose any headroom space underneath the bed? And this is one of the ways I did that. I just shaved off literally 2 inches. You might also notice all of the holes in these, and I just haven't overcome that yet. So either I will have some sort of decorative panel underneath that so you don't see them, or this is another one of my do it this way today and change it tomorrow type of strategies. So today we're just going to fit this in the van and see if it works and provides the outcome that we're looking for. And then I'm going to pull it back out. And the reason for that is we don't have a trip coming up anytime soon. And in the meantime, if I put it in, it's going to be in my way. I'm still working on panels and lighting and other things in the general living room, bedroom area. And so I want to have as much room as possible to work. Plus, that also gives me the opportunity to decide within the next few weeks whether or not I want to do decorative panels on the bottom side of this to hide those holes, or if I just order new pieces and have it just exposed aluminum. I don't know yet. So I don't have to decide that today. Today, I just have to figure out if this works. And that's what we're doing now. It took a little effort to get this installed without scratching the partition wall or anything else. What I learned is I don't want to continue doing that over and over again. So when this comes out after this test and then later goes back in, I do not want to do that again. So let me just do a test and see where we're at. All right. Good. All right, so there's no binding anywhere. So that was a success. The next thing I want to do is bring the mattress out and put the mattress on it and see where we land with that. All right. So this is just a test fit of the mattress. The mattress is a little long. I haven't trimmed it yet because it's sticking up in the back. It doesn't fit down into the frame of the bed lift. So just testing it out, seeing where we're at with it. So while it's here, I'll do things like, let's say we want to sit up in bed. If we have a projector screen at that far end of the bed and a projector here, is this a comfortable place to sit? It's actually really nice. You got the window here, the breeze is coming through. I have access to the light switch. I can put my things here in a little niche or cubby. I have access to this section here, which is where I'll put wireless phone chargers, and they'll be Velcroed down, so it's not going to come up like that, but that'll be right here to put my phone on at night. I've got one on each side, and this is pretty comfortable, and this is enough space here. So if we wanted to put a sconce or some other light fixture here, that would work out really well. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to do that. It means we have that option, because I don't see using this space to lean up against. How about this side? Also very nice. So the mattress is going to come close enough to the wall. If we put a pillow behind us or just sit up against the wall like this, that's perfectly comfortable. And again, have access to light switches for the lights on this side and access to the phone charger that's going to be here. Yeah, good. Good so far. I also want to test out to see whether or not a bunkie board is even necessary. I talked about putting a 1/4-inch plywood underneath this mattress, and I'm not sure I need to do that. The mattress is thick enough and firm enough that I don't feel any of the aluminum bars underneath me. I'm going to run it up to the top and see where we're at with the mattress on the ceiling. And I can definitely tell it's pushing against this panel, but it's not pushing too much. Okay. And it also compressed here by the motor. So whether or not I have to do that cutout for the motor as we did previously, I don't know. I don't have to do that today. Right now it goes up and it does compress up against the motor, but I don't need to make a decision on that right now. I could always adjust that later. So for today, as far as we're concerned, this test was successful. I can already see one argument for having the plywood underneath here. It's for things like this, you know, kind of hanging down. So maybe the plywood's a good idea. All right, good. Well, I'm going to take all this out now. I did all the tests I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure it was functional. I wanted to make sure there wasn't any more surprises. And yeah, I'm quite happy with it. So I think it's important to go over one more time why I did this. Because I had a pretty successful DIY bed lift, and I was very proud of that, and it turned out great. So why did I do the HappiJac? Well, the HappiJac was the goal all along. From day one, before I even bought this van, I had this vision of the HappiJac, and it could have been in either of two places, either in the front or the back of the van, and I didn't care at the time. It was just a thought process of getting the super high roof van to accommodate the HappiJac in a Ram ProMaster, so that we could walk under it and not worry about brushing the top of our head or bumping against it. And this was the perfect vehicle to do that with. So HappiJac has been part of the plan from before day one. Now, just because we have an idea or want to go a particular route doesn't mean that that's going to be the correct solution for us. So one of the things that I do quite a bit is to figure out whether or not a solution will actually work for our use case. Because we've never experienced it before, we can't make a good judgment call on whether or not we would be successful. So I like to build less expensive solutions just as a proof of concept to see if it's something that we would like or not like. Then if it doesn't work out, at least we didn't spend a ton of money on it, right? So I know I spent several $100s on the DIY bed lift, but that also gave me a lot of experience and knowledge about the van and how things work. And I think it was valuable for many reasons. So with the DIY bed lift, we did prove that the floor plan does in fact work for us. Lift bed does work for us. And then we had to evaluate whether or not that DIY bed lift was good enough for the long-term build, or if we go ahead and pull the trigger to get the HappiJac. So there were a number of things with the DIY lift that I could have overcome by adding the partition walls in the front and the back and really cradling that, maybe putting in tracks, maybe putting in locks, putting in some other things. So I didn't have to put it all the way up to the ceiling. I could put it mostly up and then lock it in place. But remember, I needed almost 10 inches for that bed as is. So 6 inches of a mattress, 3 inches of extruded aluminum, 1/2 inch for the slats that went across. So it did take up a lot of space. And if I didn't put it all the way to the ceiling, that meant that the headroom under it was going to be diminished by 2 or 3 inches, and I'm not willing to make that sacrifice. Something else we really like about HappiJac that my DIY lift didn't have is that when you stop pushing the button, whether it's going up or down, when you release the button, it stops where it's at and it's locked in place. So now mine would stop, but it would, you know, it wouldn't be locked in place. And even if we had the rails on the side, it's still not locked in place. If the straps broke or if something happened, you know, that could create a dangerous situation. So in terms of trust for all of those components of that solution, I think the level of trust for the HappiJac is here, and a level of trust for my DIY bed was somewhere maybe here. Just for long-term usability and safety aspects, I feel much better with this solution. Another item, and it's minor, with our DIY bed lift, it would come down and rest on pieces of the furniture I have here. So whatever the tabletop was, it would come down and rest on that, right? I know we could take it down and have it not hit those and then try to lock it in place with something, but then again, that's something that I also have to engineer and test and come up with, and is it reliable? How safe is it? So if we have a solid surface countertop or wood countertop, the HappiJac comes down and it stops before it hits those. So that's a huge benefit to us. Now, all of those could have been overcome with the DIY bed lift. I'm sure a lot of you who are building that lift or a similar lift will face similar challenges, and you'll overcome them with no problems whatsoever. And I think that we could have as well. And for all the things I've described so far as reasons why we're going to go with the HappiJac versus a DIY bed lift, that really put us on the fence of going one way or another. But there was one thing that clinched it and made going with the HappiJac the correct decision for us. We just learned that we are going to be grandparents. This will be our first grandchild, and that's huge. Now, I know I'm way too young to have grandkids. I get that. No, not really. But that led to thoughts of the child being, old enough to go camping with us on some trips, and that led to other thought processes of making sure that the safety and security of all of the systems in the van are really up to a higher level are really up to a higher standard than we would if it was just us and the dogs, although that's a pretty high standard. But add in a grandchild, I feel so much more confident in the HappiJac product to function and to not malfunction, to stay locked in where we have it, to not come crashing down. It just makes us feel a lot better, and that put us over the top and made the decision a lot easier. That's the honest truth of it. It could have gone either way prior to that, but this is the path we're now going on. Thank you so much for sticking to the end. I do appreciate you, and I'll see you next time.